Last time, Craig went from nightmare player to nightmare GM. He railroaded an entire campaign into the ground, turned the final boss into a cutscene, and rage quit when his players had the audacity to play the game. You'd think that would be it. You'd think the group would finally say, "Craig, mate, maybe tabletop RPGs aren't your thing." But no, Craig had another idea, another campaign, another chance to prove he was a misunderstood genius. And this time he brought his biggest tantrum yet. So after the exalted disaster, Craig decided the problem wasn't him, it was the system. Classic Craig logic. If only he had the right game, the right setting, the right tools, surely his brilliance would shine through. He settled on Pathfinder, and honestly, his pitch was genuinely impressive. Picture this, the surface world has been blasted into an irradiated wasteland. All of civilization has retreated underground into a massive metropolis called Hamya Erie. It's steampunk meets low fantasy, powered by these magical light crystals. The ruling class, the Ledian, have built this fascistic hierarchy, and at the bottom are the grey elves, an oppressed slave caste. I'll give Craig this, the man could build a world. Every time he pitched a new campaign, you could see the passion in his eyes. The settings were always creative, always detailed, always dripping with potential. The problem was never the ideas. It was what Craig did with them once people started actually playing in his worlds. The party was solid too. Our narrator played Leon, a young and naive Ledian magus, think a sheltered rich kid who's just starting to question the system he was born into. Jacob brought Basil, a deep walker witch who wore a gas mask and had a shadow demon familiar. Picture a plague doctor crossed with a warlock, lurking in the dark corners of the underground city. Apparently Basil was Jacob's best character ever, and knowing Jacob's track record from the previous campaigns, that's saying something. Then there was Jake with Imbla, a large grey elf monk with these distinctive silvery markings, a member of the oppressed class who fought with her fists, and later Mike joined as Grey, a grey elf barbarian. 4 players, 4 interesting characters, 1 underground dystopia. What could possibly go wrong? It didn't take long for Craig to start pulling his usual tricks. Early in the campaign, Leon accidentally violated some obscure underground code. A minor thing barely worth mentioning, but Craig decided this was the perfect opportunity for player versus player combat. Not a quick scuffle, not a tense standoff resolved through roleplay. No, Craig forced Basil to torture Leon for an entire session. Jacob, the guy playing Basil, tried to pull his punches. He said his character would go easy, find a way to resolve it without the full Inquisition treatment, but Craig shut that down immediately. Your character does this, because otherwise his peers would kill him. Let that sink in. The GM took control of a player's character motivation. He didn't say the situation is tense, how does Basil handle it? He said your character does this. Full stop. No agency, no choice, just Craig's script being acted out by unwilling participants. An entire session of one player being forced to torture another player's character. Fun times at the table, everyone. Craig also had this wonderful habit of giving players things they absolutely could not use. He gave Imbla the monk a suit of chainmail armor. Now, if you know anything about Pathfinder monks, their entire class is built around not wearing armor. Their abilities literally don't work with armor on. It's like giving a fish a bicycle, a chainmail bicycle. At this point you have to wonder, did Craig not read the rules? Or did he read them and just not care? With Craig, both options are equally likely. But the real kicker came with Leon. Craig decided to change the narrator's character class without asking. Leon was a vanilla magus, straightforward, clean, worked well. Craig switched him to a black blade magus and gave him a sentient sword. Sounds cool, right? Except the blade was a death demon that wanted to commit genocide. Just casually strapping a weapon of mass destruction to your player's character without consent. Normal GM things, definitely not a red flag at all. Craig had this signature move that perfectly captured his GM style. Whenever a player wanted to do something that wasn't in his script, something as basic as assessing a situation, he'd start counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, too bad. Jake wanted Imbla to look around, get a read on the room before acting. Perfectly reasonable. Standard adventurer behavior. Craig started the countdown. Jake didn't react fast enough, or rather, didn't give the answer Craig wanted fast enough. A guard scored a critical hit. Imbla went down. This is the GM equivalent of a toddler screaming, "Do it now," at a toy that won't cooperate. Craig didn't want players who thought about their actions. He wanted actors who delivered their lines on cue. The combat encounters were equally punishing. Every single fight was brutally overtuned, requiring the party to burn through all their resources. No easy encounters, no breathers, just relentless meat grinders that felt less like challenges and more like punishment for daring to exist in Craig's world. And then came the moment that gave this story its name. The party had just survived a brutal boss fight. An NPC named Figaro, described by the narrator as an obnoxious Batman ripoff that Craig clearly adored, was mortally wounded, and Craig began his dramatic death scene. Now here's the thing, the arena was flooding with undead. The players reasonably wanted to escape. They just barely survived the boss. Undead were pouring in. Every survival instinct said run. But Craig was in the middle of his performance. He was doing Figaro's dying monologue, the emotional farewell, the dramatic last words. And when the players tried to act, tried to save their own characters from the approaching undead horde, Craig screamed at them. Don't ruin my scene. There it is, the mask slipping completely off. This wasn't a game for Craig. It was a stage production and the players were the audience. They were supposed to sit there, shut up and watch Craig's story unfold. The dice, the character sheets, the rules, all props in Craig's one-man show. He followed it up with something even worse. Don't interrupt me when I am talking again, said like a threat, like a parent scolding children for speaking out of turn. The campaign's climax was pure Craig. The BBEG, the big bad, finally appeared. Craig looked at the table and said, roll fortitude save. Everyone rolled, everyone failed. This is a level 9 spell, you need a nat 20. So why even ask them to roll? Why put dice in people's hands if the only acceptable result is a statistical miracle? Because Craig wanted the theatre of it. The clatter of dice, the hope in their eyes, and then the crushing realization that none of it mattered. But then Craig let one character escape. Just one, the narrator's character re-era, no roll required, no explanation. The BBEG staggered back, gasped, I impossible, and Craig turned to the narrator with this delighted expression. How does re-era finish him? The other players sat there with disgust and confusion on their faces. The final boss of an entire campaign, reduced to a cutscene. One player got to be the hero, not because of clever play or good rolls, but because Craig decided it. Everyone else was a spectator at their own table. Playing favourites to the bitter end. Craig eventually got bored of Pathfinder, not because the campaign was done, because he lost interest, like a kid dropping a toy. He sulked for months, barely running sessions, until he announced they were switching to D&D 4th edition. All characters had to be rebuilt from scratch, poorly translated, stripped of everything that made them interesting. Months of character development, gone in an afternoon because Craig wanted a new toy. The new campaign featured Craig's greatest hits. He forced Jake to leave the supply cart behind because it would look stupid to bring along. Then the narrator's character got grabbed by tentacles. No save allowed, no agency, just, your character does not know what is going on. Classic Craig, even in a new system, the song remains the same. The campaign ended with a revelation that perfectly captured Craig's philosophy. An AI entity revealed that all the player characters were secretly avatars of gods, divine beings in mortal shells. Well, all except Jake's character. Jake's character was just a temple guard. Playing favourites wasn't just Craig's habit, it was his art form. Some players got to be literal gods. Jake got to be the guy who watches the door. And just like every Craig campaign before it, this one ended the same way. Put on ice. Craig lost his inspiration. The underground kingdom of Hamir Eerie, with all its potential and all its lore, abandoned in a drawer somewhere. 3 campaigns now. 3 creative, ambitious settings. 3 spectacular crashes. And every single time the pattern was the same. Craig builds something beautiful, invites people in, and then destroys it because they won't play their parts in his story. But here's the thing, the narrator mentions there's one more story. Craig's ultimate meltdown, the one that finally ended everything. The moment the group said enough. After everything we've seen, the forced PvP, the stolen agency, the screaming, the cutscene bosses, the blatant favoritism, apparently it gets worse. Next time on the Craig Saga, Craig's final chapter, the meltdown that broke the group, Part 4, the last story. See you there.